part 2 of a short history of 19th century reality. The rise of nationalism indicates that there must be established a normalized political map of the world which gives the best possible geographical divisions for human administrations. After the Napoleonic Wars of 1803 to 1850, there was a relative peace as the world of Europe recovered from its exhaustion. And indeed, Europe was a system of governing machines abominably adjusted, and from the struggle of this, the, quote, nationalist movements in the 19th century history obtained its driving force. Indeed, a nation is an accumulation of human beings who think that they are one people. A common language does not constitute a nation. A common philosophy does not constitute a nation. A common literature does not constitute a nation. Britain is separate from the United States. The Republic of Argentina is separate from Spain. A nation is any assembly of people which is afflicted by or chooses to be afflicted by a foreign office of its own origin in order that it should act and behave collectively as if it alone constitutes humanity. All humans are by nature partisans and patriots, but the natural tribalism and territorialism, including the 19th century imperialism, was unnaturally exaggerated and was forced into the mold of nationalism. New and big national symbols of the modern nations became tribal gods in the 20th century and beyond. The essential idea of 19th century nationalism was the, quote, legitimate claim, end quote, of every nation to complete sovereignty, that every nation would manage all of its affairs within its own territory, regardless of what the other nations did. However, a flaw in this idea is that the affairs and interests of every modern community in developed countries extend to the uttermost geological parts of the earth. The Great War from 1914 onward distressed many tribes of people. The conflict interrupted, for example, the marketing of common goods upon which they relied for necessary ammunition and hunting, and without which non-farming communities could not obtain sufficient sustenance. A world of independent sovereign nations is a world of perpetual injuries, a world of states constantly wasting time preparing for waging war. Concurrently, the idea of imperialism emerged alongside nationalism, in which a powerful and advanced nation was conceded the right to dominate, control a group of other less advanced nations, less politically developed nations or peoples whose nationality was underdeveloped, who were expected by the dominant nation to be grateful for its protection and dominance. But this word of empire differed from its former universal significance, for the new empires were not like the world empire of Rome. But in any case, these ideas of nationality and empire ruled the political thought of the world throughout the latter half of the 19th century, and to the practical exclusion of any broader conception of a common human welfare. These ideas were plausible ideas, but they failed to address the new need for world control and world security that the mechanical and industrial revolutions were making more imperative. These two ideas were accepted ideologies due to the fact that people had neither the pertinent views that a study of world history can provide, nor they had any longer the comprehensive protection and charity of a world religion. All of the routines of ordinary life was in danger, but this was not successfully realized until the time was too late. And obviously, they did not get through entire lectures on different philosophers like I have. So, these ends previously mentioned are to be attained by a complex, constructive effort arising through the realization of new human necessities against ignorance and the old human nature. Here the figure Robert Owen in 1771 and through 1858 becomes important due to the fact that he was the key founder of modern socialism, the world socialism arising from the year 1835 onward. Owen was a thoroughly competent businessman, and he was aware of the complete waste of human possibilities among his workers. Therefore, he naturally sought to improve their condition. Between 1800 and 1828 CE, Owen reduced the hours of labor. He made the factories sanitary. He improved the training of his workers. He provided unemployment pay. He established a system of schools and constructed a better model of industrialism, while at the same time sustaining its prosperity. He rightly thought that men and women are largely the product of their educational environment. His American Experiment and latter writings point to a completer form of socialism. He knew that humans can no more hope for real economic justice while they pay for work with money or currency of fluctuating value than they could hope for a punctual world if there was a continual constant variability in the length of an hour. Most of the cooperative societies of the 20th century combined the collective buying and distribution of commodities of agriculture for collective manufacture. While independent developments were going on in America and Britain, English law had long prohibited the restraint of trade or raised prices and wages by concerted action. The agrarian industrial changes of the 18th century had already produced a great volume of workers competing for the insufficient employment. England in 1824, the House of Commons recognized the desirability of relieving tension by conceding the right of the workmen to form groups for, quote, collective bargaining, end quote, with the masters. This enabled trade unions to develop with a large measure of freedom. At first, these trade unions were very primitive organizations with restricted freedoms, but the trade unions grew gradually to become a great system representing the great masses of industrial workers. These trade unions started in Britain and the United States, but with various national modifications and under varying legal conditions. They soon spread to France, Germany, and all the other westernized communities at the time. The trade unionists did their best to give the existing capitalism and existing conditions of employment, but the socialists would change the system. It was the power of Karl Marx which brought these two movements into relationship. A man with a strong sense of history, he was the first to perceive that the old social classes that had endured since the beginning of civilization were in the process of dissolution. According to Marx, the capitalist would garner power over capital into few and fewer individuals, until at last they would concentrate all the means of production and transit, etc., into a form seizable by the workers whose solidarity would be developed by the process of organizing and concentrating on industry. They would then seize this acquired capital and then utilize it for their own interests. This would be the social revolution. Of course, this 19th century social revolution constituted a common ownership of the earth and management by the community of the great productive services which the private capitalists had previously organized and consolidated. For Marx, this would be the complete end of the capitalist system, but not the end of the utilization of the system of capitalism. Plato, for example, looked to the common sense of man of any or every class to reorganize the faulty political, economic, and social structure. Marx looked for a specific driving force. Class hostility, in his case, was based on expropriation and injustice. What Marx failed to realize is the fact that labor everywhere has a common interest in the peace of the world, although not all feel this way. The general disposition of socialists is to look to the organization of labor and labor only to supply the agents that will disentangle the political and economic organization of human affairs from the more or less irresponsible private owners and entrepreneurs who now more or less control it. These are the broad features of socialism. State socialism would run the economic business of the country through its political government. The newer schools would entrust a large measure in the government of each industry to the workers of every grade of distinction, including the directors and managers engaged in that particular industry. The proletariat is supposed to be the dictating the government through committees of the workmen and workwomen and the military, but as a matter of fact, these people have little or no real directive power. They assemble in mass meetings and give a general assent to the proceedings of the government. There can be fewer people in modern times who fail to realize the provisional nature and the dangerous instability of our present political and economical system. Still fewer who believe with the individualists that profit hunting will guide humanity to any prosperity and happiness. First, great rearrangements are necessary and a systematic legal subordination of personal self-seeking to the public good. But how far has socialism gone towards inventing a conception of this new political and social order? There is actually no clear conception of the new state, towards which we vaguely struggle, and our science of human relationships is still speculative as to leave humanity without definitive, primarily important issues. Marx assumed too hastily that a revolutionary impulse would necessarily produce an ordered state of a new and better kind. Sometimes revolutions, for example, actually stop halfway in a mere destruction. The Bolsheviks, for example, in their Russian experiment, seem to have been guided by the, quote, dictatorship of the proletariat, end quote. But in practice, Trotsky and Lenin have proved as autocratic czars. From a study of the French Revolution, for example, we know that a revolution can actually establish nothing permanent that has not already been thought out beforehand and apprehended by the general mind. The French Republic had, with difficulties in their own economy, currency, and international relationships, collapsed under the egotism of Napoleon. Law and a plan, steadily upheld, is more necessary in revolutionary times than in ordinary times, because in revolutionary times, society does degenerate under the ascendancy of the forcible and the intelligent. The political and social sciences, geography, history, philosophy, anthropology, archaeology, economics, psychology, and sociology, etc., of our age will measure the preliminary intellectual tasks still to be potentially accomplished by humankind before there will be any permanent and constructive achievements emerging from the inherent traditionalism that rules over the collective pursuits of humankind at present. The socialist proposal is that land and all the natural means of production, transit, distribution should be collectively owned, but within these limits, free private ownership is allowed to the extent with unrestricted personal freedom to everyone. And so, in a sense, the private owner of land or business is a public official insofar as their ownership is sanctioned and protected by the community in each society. And instead of being paid a salary rate, they are allowed to make their own profits for their own livelihood. But how are humans to secure the best direction of human sentiments and the maximum of willing disposition and cooperation with these endeavors, since we all vary differently in what we want? And so the answer in this, in its completeness, involves only the best of methods of these departments and of their complete correlation. I propose the Big Five agenda. First is education. The preservation of the individual for an understanding and a willing cooperation in the general sentiments of the world. 2. Information. The truthful presentation of public concerns to the individual for their judgment and approval. A need for current information, a need for the codification of law that is plain, clear, and accessible to all human beings. Representation. The selection of representatives and agents to act in the collective interest, plenipotentiaries in consistency, in the consistent will of the general will of the people based on education and information. 4. The executive. The appointment of executive agents and the maintenance of means for keeping them responsible to the community without it hampering with intelligent initiatives. And fifthly, thought and research. The systematic critique of actions and laws in order to provide data for good judgments, and through those judgments to ensure the secularized improvement of human organization. So, with that being said, civilized human society needs an education system properly equipped and financed, one that is well organized without the interventions of the religious. Information itself needs to be supplied chiefly by a non-venal press that is not dependent upon business with markets and subsidies. We see the methods of electoral offices returning politicians to power, an unrelenting representative that differs from any hereditary king or casual conqueror. We very well know that the pursuit of political or the social sciences and of public criticism is still the work of devoted individuals rather than a recognized and honored function of the state. And at any act of getting socialism started is to ensure that private investors and businesses do not control any of the political life of the state whatsoever. So the social and political thinking of the 19th century was, and even in the vast reality of the mechanical revolution, limited and insufficient in regard to international relations. And the conception of the state might be several like organizations in different geographical areas from the Republic of San Marino to the British Empire. I state these things because they are facts and a living and necessary part of a modern understanding of human history. It is not my task to advocate or controvert for an enormous amount of intellectual discussion and education, whether decades or centuries or millennia, must soon intervene before a new order runs over the whole surface of our planet. And to such a new order, human life will become more disastrous due to destructive war methods and materials that the industrial revolutions are continually producing. Thank you.